Well folks, today's the day we're going to see if we can get this engine unstuck. With some help from some people on a truck forum online, I figured out that it's a 261 inline 6, which is pretty cool. So I've had it soaking with oil for the past couple of days down in the cylinders. I put some ATF down there and some penetrating oil and whatnot, so hopefully it did its thing. And I took the starter off this morning, because I got to check and see if that's any good. And right now I'm going to be pulling off the cover for the bell housing for the clutch to get all the mice stuff out of it. Because whether you guys can see it or not, it's full right up to about here with mouse nests and whatnot. So we're going to get that cleaned out so that way if it does spin over, it won't be dragging all that crap around inside. So let's get that pulled off first. It's full. Packed it in good. As you can see. So scrape as much of that out as possible, and depending on what becomes of this engine, I might consider pulling the transmission and the bell housing off and getting all that freed up. Bell housing's all been cleaned out. I blew it out with a bunch of air to get most of the mouse crap out of it. I was able to get the clutch fork to move back and forth. The master cylinder's junk here, the slave cylinder that is. But I was able to get that move, and the throw-up bearing does move on the shaft, which is always a plus. But obviously enough, everything else, the pressure plate and whatnot, is stuck. So I tried to roll the engine over the best I could. I made a makeshift strap wrench with a V-belt to get around the crank pulley, and that broke and didn't work. I also tried to get a pry bar up on the pressure plate underneath in here to grab it somehow, and I really can't do that. So the next thing I'm going to resort to is pulling the cover off of this transmission and freeing up my shifter so that way I can get this into gear. Hopefully I can get it into 4th gear, which I would assume would be direct drive, and then I might be able to get, as much as I hate to do it, a pipe wrench or something on this drive shaft to spin everything through at once, because I really don't want to have to pull the head on this thing, because I don't want to get that far into it to free it up, but we'll have to see what happens. So let's get the top of this transmission pulled off. Well, I have a feeling this transmission may or may not be any good anymore. Take a look inside. Aside from being rusty on the top, the gears don't look too bad down the bottom, but I'm going to have to get the vacuum and suck all that out of there. But the reason why it wasn't shifting is because of that. That would be why. All the shift rods are all rusted up from years of water going down inside. So we'll see what we can do with this. See if we can get it cleaned up and at least get some of these gears moving. Alright folks, I got the transmission cleaned out and I got everything to shift again, and we do have movement. So it just moved about 1/4 of an inch this way. So I'm going to see if I can work it back and forth a little bit. It just broke free. Not much, but don't need much. So I'm going to keep working this back and forth for a bit. I still have the oil down in the cylinders, so that'll help. But I think what I'm also going to do is pull the valve cover off on the side over here. Take a look in and make sure that none of the valves are sticking and nothing's rusted. I don't want to bend any push rods or anything like that if I can help it. I got my valve covers off for the rocker arms and for the lifters. Everything looks pretty good. The only issue that I ran into is I have 3 stuck exhaust valves on that one, and that one. And they're stuck pretty good. I wasn't able to get them freed up, or get them to return at least. So unfortunately what I'm going to be doing is pulling the head on this. I really did not want to have to, but at this point I might as well. There's no other good way to do it. So I got to drain down my radiator, take all my hoses and everything off here, and I'm not going to take my exhaust manifold off. All I'm going to do is separate it from the downpipe right there, so I don't have to worry about these gaskets. Head's been pulled off and everything. I ended up cleaning up the top of the engine block. I'll throw some pictures in here of what it looked like when I pulled it apart. It was pretty crusty. There was a lot of crap on top of the cylinders. The top of the head cleaned up pretty nice. I ended up stoning it like I did with my 305 V6. Ran it over there quick, took all the high spots out, smoothed it off real nice. And the cylinder walls also cleaned up pretty good. I ran some used 400 grit sandpaper around the inside. Didn't score it up or anything, took all the rust out. So I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. I still have to wipe out some of the junk in there from me cleaning it up. And I also put the starter on it and turned it over. It spins over pretty nice. It still has a stiff spot with this piston, so I'm not sure what's going on with that, but I would assume time will tell when it comes time to start it up. And as for the head, that's probably the worst part about it, especially those 3 stuck exhaust valves, especially this cylinder too. There's a lot of crusty rust in here. It's pretty bad. It's almost completely full up inside where the passageway is for the exhaust. So right now I'm going to be pulling the rocker arms off of this, getting this all cleaned up. I don't think I'm going to lap the valves. If the faces and the seats aren't pitted, I'm just going to be wire wheeling them and putting them back in for now if somebody buys this. If I sell it, they're going to end up rebuilding the engine anyways. I don't want to get that far into it, so just going to be doing a quick cleanup and reassembly. I got a gasket kit on order right now from Napa, which will be in the end of this week. So if all goes well, we'll be getting the engine back together, getting the gaskets back in it, and hopefully firing it up. So let's get to work on this head. My rocker arm assembly is off, along with all the valves and everything. I got everything bagged for each cylinder and each valve, so it'll be all nice and easy to distinguish when it goes back together and when cleaning everything up. The only problem that I ran into was on the 5th cylinder. I broke the exhaust valve when I was taking it out. It had to be driven out and the head snapped off, but what I found was, if you guys can see it, there's a shiny spot over here, and you can see it's really dull in this area, so it's been cracked for quite some time now, and I guess just me tapping it out finally broke it over on this side the rest of the way. So I'm going to have to scour the net and see if I can find either a used valve to put in this thing. I'd rather not have to buy a new one if I don't have to, but if it comes to that, not a big deal. So right now I'm going to scrape off the bottom side of the head, get as much of the gasket and junk off of it as I can, and I'm going to end up power washing the head because it has a lot of really bad greasy stuff in here. It kind of looks like never sees. So I'm going to end up scraping the bottom side off and then power washing it just to get rid of all this and to clean out the water jacket some, because it's got a lot of muddy, rusty stuff in it too. Bottom of the head cleaned up pretty nice. I ran the stone over it and everything smoothed out really good. Cleaned out all the ports the best I could, and it's not too bad. Unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to lap some of these seats because of the abundance of rust on them. I know they're not going to seat very well, and it's apart now, so I might as well do it. So this is going to be it for part 1, folks, for getting the 62 Chevy truck running. When we get back on part 2, we should be able to get into the assembly, getting these valves in the head, getting the head back onto the engine, and if all goes well, getting this thing to fire up, which I'm really looking forward to. So there you have it, folks. That's all for now.